Okay, let me see. Is there any other thing that I want to do?
Second. All right, I do believe we are live. I'm just grabbing the link and then I'll be on camera here.
Let me save here, guys.
And there's the link for you in Zoom.
Right, beautiful. So I am going to take a minute and
And yes, I'll be right there.
so it's there.
All right, we're ready to roll. So, do you want me to tag anyone? Oh, I can't hear you, Kavita.
Oops. Yeah, I've tagged everybody in that particular post.
Oh, cool. You're on it.
So they should be having the notification, and I will just ensure that the post is up and we can all see it.
Cool.
I think, yeah, I also have YouTube up. So if anybody's going to comment there, we're going to go from there.
Cool.
All right, let's jump right in. Welcome, gentlemen, to this challenge. I know we've welcomed you quite a few times. This is our official video with the content and all the juiciness that's going to happen. So, really happy that you're in this space. Our hearts are truly delighted by your acts of courage, of showing up, of trusting, of being willing, of allowing yourself to experience yourself in this frequency, allowing yourself to unpack your layers and your stories and your patterns in the questions and the prompts, and not making yourself wrong for uh, getting it right or not, because that's not the name of the game here. It's really a rediscovery of yourself. So, that being said, um, there are quite a few things that we'd like to cover today with you. Um, the name of this call is called Hide Your Heart slash Decrees and Desires and Decrees. And the reason we named it that way is because a lot of your patterns have been designed to hide your heart. Um, there is a good reason and a good intention for that. However, it doesn't need to be the truth that you operate from. So we're going to unpack that today, as well as taking you through the process of what it means to uh, have desires, honor your desires, and how to make a decree and the energetics behind that. So I'm setting the tone with that, and I'm sure if more gems come up, you'll certainly have that as well. You're muted, Lainey.
I'm sure that's a bare minimum of what will go down here, and of course, we are always excited to see what unfolds too. So I see Ruth was with us as well, tagging Fivos. So I think I'm just excited to be here. I am delighted that we're running this challenge. I'm delighted that all the men have shown up and curiosity and willingness, and have started exploring and sharing their role models, either if it was that they had um, experiences that showed them what they didn't want, right? A lot of times we learn by contrast. I know that has been a large majority of our experiences as well. And then there's also space where, you know, we're just very resourceful, creatures as humans. So even if it is that you were learning by contrast, a lot of times you might find role models in media and books and that kind of thing. So I love that you've given yourself an opportunity to share some of that, and to begin naming it, and then to also start defining some terms that you would associate with a king, with the power words. So I know I have started to read some of those and was very appreciative of the thoughtfulness that has gone in, and also saw plenty of room for expansion and for really starting to question. That's why we encourage curiosity so much, because I think it's really important when you're stepping into your power and you're starting to make contact with the truth, that you're questioning every little thing that you've learned and beginning to be curious about, well, why is it that I believe that? And where is it that I came to that conclusion that this means that, and that there are all these definitions that sometimes we just take for granted, and they may or may not actually be serving you. So I know we'll get into some of that as we go. I'll pause there. You looked puzzled, Kavita.
No, it's not about you. I'm getting a call from British Columbia, and I'm like, don't know what that's about. And it's from some gentleman. I don't know who it is. So I'm like, okay. Okay.
An English king. So yeah, I think it will be juicy and fun to dive in here. I love that Ruth is catching quotes as we go. So thank you, Ruth. Honoring your desires and how to make a decree. Yes, beautiful topic. Okay, so where do you want to get started?
So let's jump right into the whole safety, security, protection, energetic patterns that happen, because it is connected to nobility. It is connected to the energy of honoring, and yet there is so much room for upgrades. So let's do the upgrade.
Let's start there. Yeah, it's funny. Okay, so I wanted to start there, but then I was just remembering we recorded a video, I think, for these fellas already called The Prince and the Prostitute, something like that. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe they get a bonus call. Yeah, my mind was going there for a minute, but it has everything to do with king and protection and defensive, as it relates to safety. And so much of that is hardwired that it almost becomes second nature. So when it is that you're just operating from what you've seen, and maybe that's in your family, maybe that's in media, wherever that is, it can be a default to just operate from that protector role. And that is a beautiful thing when it's coming from power. The glitch is when it's coming from fear. And this is the place in which you guys get to be really, really curious and start noticing, like, okay, if I were not in this protector energy, if I were not doing this, what would happen? And am I okay? Or, I use the word okay, but can I be okay in an energy of acceptance and non-attachment if this thing were to go, let's say, in a different direction? So that's kind of some of the things that are coming up related to the defensive and safety protection. And I noticed that because it's so hardwired and so kind of ingrained in the male psyche to do that, that sometimes it's just like an impulsive and reactive place where it really requires a certain amount of space between stimulus and response to have that conscious awareness that, okay, maybe, just maybe, this isn't something that I want to stand up for or protect or, step into that noble energy, so to speak, if you haven't paused long enough to ensure that that thing that you're fighting for or standing for or protecting is actually something that you still value in present day time. Because if it's just coming from default and programming, then it may or may not actually be something that you want to continue to stand up for. So I'm going to pause there and let you connect the dots and share anything that's coming up for you, Kavita.
Yes, and I think that's such a beautiful point. Like, what are you standing up for? What are you defending? What are you fighting for? Um, why are you saying yes to this? Um, while it's noble to, stand up for something, is it really the truth? Or are you standing up for something because you have been asked to do so? Simply because you've been asked to do so.
Wow, that was good. It's like when Oprah says it was a tweetable moment. That's what it made me think of. But yeah, because um, think about how many people go off, like how many men and now women included, but get shipped off to war to protect and stand for and keep us, safe in a sense. And there's that defense where they may or may not have taken time and space, like I was talking about, to truly look at, is this really what I want to stand for? Like, or is this something that I inherited from my family and feel like I should stand for?
Right. And so we're going to talk about the dynamics of men and women here in terms of men and not masculine and feminine energies, but men and women. Um, so for some of you guys, you may not be in the space of having a girlfriend or wife or whatever, but think of your mom or your sister or any other female dynamic in your reality, and what that means. So I believe, and you all get to correct me where I'm wrong, I believe that uh, there's a natural energy of when a woman requests something from a man, he instinctively, naturally wants to serve. And he wants to serve from the best of his abilities and his capacity to serve in that moment and from what he believes to be true. And sometimes in service to her, and again, think, this can be your mom or anybody else. Um, he is short-sighted. He sees it up to in service to her request. He may not see it, well, is it, what does that mean for me? Um, because in that normal traditional sense of that energy as well, he is willing to sacrifice anything and everything in the process of that service. And he is coming from a pure energy of service and of being of service and in service to the desire, the request. Obviously, in this dynamic here, it can be dangerous based on that woman who is making that request. If she's in a shit ton of shadow, I'm going to say it like that, that's already a messy situation. And if he doesn't have the insights and the hindsight to see all the pieces playing out, he can unwittingly putting himself in a position where he compromises his own values and his own standards. And when you're as a man in that position, it can become quite confusing of where did I go wrong? Because in your field, this is like you did the thing. You did the noble thing. What happened? Go ahead, Annie.
Yeah, it breaks my heart a little bit for one, all the younger versions of myself, right? And the men that I had relationships with. I've historically been what they would call a masculine woman. It's so funny to say that. Like, I am not a masculine woman, but I'm a very direct woman, and I do have a lot of power, hold a lot of power. And I know since Ruth is here, I can reference this time where I remember I was getting ready to go out, so I was like, dressed in heels and I don't know what else. I just remember the heels, but also very capable and doing something that I wanted for my home right up until the moment I was going out. And so I was like, oh, let me just tend to this little thing. So I literally was in high heels with a power drill tending to my furniture. And so that image came up, came to mind as I was saying the thing about, having been, it's like, a more correct way for me to say that would be I was a woman that held a very masculine and feminine energy. Like I could hold both and move back and forth between those. But in my own shadow dances, there have been many, many occasions where I emasculated men. And I'm grateful for all of my own lessons and growth and learning so that I am in a relationship now where there's a lot of mutual respect and very high level of communication so that that doesn't get repeated. So I certainly learned from those experiences. But when you were speaking, I just felt my heart where it is that, yeah, it's just like that breakdown in communication where the man is trying to really provide. And yet, if he's doing it for a woman who's not in a place of valuing herself and has her own shadow games and isn't in appreciation of herself and what she brings to the table, then she will automatically project that outward, right? So I know there are men in this container, and I don't know how many, but I know there's at least a few that have had that experience where it feels like, but they were doing everything they knew how, because that is what that masculine energy wants to do, is provide and protect. And yet nothing was quite enough because of the shadow games.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful point because again, while it's easy to see this dynamic in, let's say, a partnership, um, it's probably harder to see how do you deal with this if it's your mom,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because this,
Even a boss, right? Like if you think about an employer or a collaborator or something like that.
yep, that is true. So um, there is the energy where for the man, it seems like an energy of going into submission because you're not interested in having a power struggle. You're not interested in fighting with the woman in front of you who is saying something, regardless if she's right or wrong or whatever the case is. Um, because we know there is more to it than just right and wrong. It's the energy in which you approach something. It's the pure desire behind all the drama that might show up. Um, and again, there are many layers, so it takes quite a little bit of skill set to have that level of clear communication. So I know you've spoken to this, Lainey, about a man showing up and having this sort of conversation, and even while he starts the conversation, and it might be his own shadows coming to the surface, or he gets hooked into the woman's shadow games. It's not the end of the story. So maybe you can speak a little bit more to that.
Yeah, for sure. And, we have talked about it. And then I was just having a whole other layer of awareness as we're speaking now, because I have had I don't know what to call it. I was going to say luxury. I don't know if that's the word I want to use. Pleasure. We'll just go with pleasure of being in, I would say at this point, two relationships where that level of communication was really at a high level, where we're both showing up very transparently, very willing and open to find the gem, even though it feels like a shit show in the moment. The whole no mud no lotus, like, because my last partner was a therapist, we were both therapists, and now I've moved into coaching. But at that time we were both willing to sit down and have those kind of conversations. And now, being in a different kind of relationship where, while the person's not necessarily that, that he's not a therapist, but he is someone who can communicate and has has a very high appreciation and value for transparent communication. And I can see now very clearly like what the soul lessons and the gems were from the previous relationship that then I got to apply over here, right? So it's like one of the things that I really, really value about my current relationship is that, and I would consider him a king, is that kings do not avoid the conversation. And while I had that in both relationships, so technically I've been with two kings, but it was like in the previous relationship, and this was again a reflection of where I was at in my journey, which I take responsibility for, was that he was still holding on to that defensive protection safety mechanism that we're talking about. So I guess another way to say it was like, while I feel like I'm with a king now, I was with a king in training over here, because there were some serious prince moments where it's like it would look like a king, wait, shape shift into prince, right? So there's that maturation phase in which someone is morphing, and sometimes it does take the end of a relationship for them to move into the full embodiment of that king nobility. And so very clearly for me, what sets a prince from a king apart at this juncture is the willingness to come back around and say, okay, that was some shit right there. Like, that really got me. Like, you calling me out on my shit was not comfortable, and I did not want to own it or see it right then, but I do now. And it's not about the whole right and wrong, because that does come from a fear, ego driven place, but it's the willingness to say, like, okay, that was a heated moment. That was kind of, touch and go, a little spicy. And I can see that that's a space where, because of my reaction, I really have a growth opportunity there. So to me, that really sets a king and a prince apart, because you wouldn't avoid that conversation. Again, you really see that there are gems in the triggers, and that looking at those and coming into contact with those is actually your portal to consciousness that allows you to evolve, which and then in turn allows the relationship to evolve. And if one person doesn't have that piece, you've all heard the adage, you either grow together or you grow apart. So I'll pause there, and I want to check to see if anybody's commenting, because you look very busy over there on your phone.
Yes. So I'm seeing the question from Kyle Mahadeo. He's saying, I heard you both say and use awareness. How do you build that? I think it's a beautiful question. So thank you for asking it. It's where we would use the term both and, where you are in the story of your life. You already have all the material there. The people are already there playing their roles on their parts. And one way you can catch this very easily is how many of these patterns have repeated itself. How many stories have you been in, and it feels like you're in a loop. You're trapped in a storyline, and it seems like you can't get out of it. That's a very, very obvious one to see, and to raise your awareness on that. The second can be, because you've been doing this work for quite some time, it requires a higher level of awareness to catch the little nuances and the tiny pieces of signs or evidence that there's something to look at here. And so you're already building your awareness and doing the work on yourself, and yet it depends on how fast you want to catapult that experience. That's where you get to look at who are the people supporting you, and the energy fields that you're in. And it's also why we ask the question about your mentor, because it gives you a very clear idea of what is driving you forward and what that person represents. And it's a beautiful question to talk about desires and decrees and what it really means to get clear on your desires. So we're going to speak on that in a moment. But I was grinning because you barely said the statement and Ruth already got on board with it in quoting you. So I was cracking up at that. So that's why you were being amused by reaction towards it of Ruth catching kings do not avoid the conversation. So not only do they not avoid the conversation, they have the conversation. And if it's the conversation is not quite complete and we didn't take it to the finish line, they will have it again and again, not from a place of butting heads, but the willingness to see the truth, speak the truth, and not be attached to the people and the drama in the outcome of whatever that truth means. Go ahead, Lainey. I see your lit up.
So good. So good. I love it. Like I'm just really lit up right now by um because there are places in my life where I've been living this and testing this and questioning different spots. And um yeah, when you see it, it allows me to have like a really even a deeper appreciation for the men in my life and the ways in which um yeah, it like you really can see it. It's a small statement. It's a very small statement, but the truth can be so simple and so sharp sometimes that truly is like the hallmark of a king. Like a king just does not avoid the thing. And I've had plenty of experiences in my life where a prince has been dressed up very nicely and convinced me of some king qualities. And of course, again, prince and king, like you're always in the maturation phase. The same for women, right? Like there's plenty of princess energy that looks queen like. And not throwing it under the bus, it's just that we all know that when something is of a higher, finer quality, it's just more pleasing and more satisfying. And so it's the difference between having the real or the what do they call that, like a knockoff.
Imitation. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's just you can just taste the difference, right? And when your tastes are refined, you just will not have appetite for the lesser quality. And it'll just at some point when you can see the games and you can see through them, and it's just like, no, like that's avoidance, that's not quality, right? Like it's that simple. And of course, when we're willing to face all the things, we're actually in our power and knowing that we don't have to avoid anything because and I'm saying we as both male, female humans, this is really just a sovereignty. It's not just about men and king, but in that sovereignty, it's like there is absolutely zero reason for me to avoid anything because my power is on the other side of facing the thing, no matter what the thing is. So, yeah, I'm just really delighting in the simplicity and truth of that. And there's a bell. Do you hear the bell?
Yes. Um, so to really bring that part home for you, it's and I've said this in various ways on other calls and recordings. As you're going through this journey, you will recognize, oh, I've done this. I'm at maybe 20% at this level. Oh, I've made it to 25. Oh, now I'm at 60%. So there's never a judgment of, am I there yet? Am I not there? You're just seeing each opportunity that shows up in your field to move it up to the next level of coming from that sovereign energy, right? That king energy. And the women in your life, they either step up or they don't, right? They've also got their journey to do. And the most brilliant piece in all of this is speaking the truth. The truth is not a hard ass truth, slap somebody with it kind of thing. It really comes from grace, and it's a simple truth. It's beautiful, it's brilliant, it's powerful. When people hear it, they know it. It's it doesn't bring arguments. When truth is spoken, it actually makes that illusion of the argument collapse right there. There is there is silence when somebody receives it. If there is a woman and she's in her princess energy, you might see that kicking and screaming. Usually the prostitute shadow, and because we tend to talk about archetypes from time to time, so the prostitute energy will be screaming, the child will be kicking. You have the kicking and screaming, and it means that she may throw blame at you. She may shame you for your choices and your behavior, try to make you wrong, kick you out of the room, all sorts of behavior. It's ugly. And this is also true for any uh, man in the room where his child prince archetype gets activated. He just doesn't want to hear it. He becomes very locked in what he thinks is right, and he's going to do it that way, regardless of the moving pieces and the dynamics. And so this is why you've noticed the way we've designed this challenge is for you to come in with the curiosity, with the willingness, with the responsibility for your own energetic up levels in being here. And while we will say the things, your journey will be as amazing as your willingness and your capacity to receive and to speak to what's happening in your field as you unveil yourselves, right? And you take off the layers and all the programming from society, your parental um, coding from your parents, um, and all those things. There's no blame and shame in all of that. It was there and it's designed to be there because when we come into choosing a human body, the first level is survival consciousness. And you were meant to evolve that survival consciousness and go into a higher level. So all the terrible things about um, blaming your parents, blaming the world, all of that. We're not engaging in all of that. But I'm grinning because Lainey, I think you've got a beautiful story to tell about your dad as well when he's seen women and their behavior patterns. I think it's a beautiful thing to say. So I'll pause for a second so that you really give something tangible for the folks listening to this to land it in their field.
Okay. I'm like, okay, where does this story start?
You told me a beautiful version of it. Was it yesterday where your dad was observing the women in his life and clearly seeing that this stuff is not working.
Okay, yeah. I'm like, yeah, okay. He's been my dad for like 40 something years, right? So I was like, which part? Um, yeah. So it's very fascinating because I guess you could, from a princess energy, call me a daddy's girl. I never really put myself in that box because I always thought myself to be independent and, you know, individual thinker and that kind of thing. But when I think back, that is true that I have always like really loved and adored and respected him. And then, like most women, we go through an awkward phase of becoming a woman. And this can go in a lot of different directions. And for me, it definitely created a gap between that closeness. And so there was time where, you know, I didn't really have a great relationship with him. And a big part of that was because of what you're referring to, which is all the women in his life and what he had witnessed. And I think he just kind of was like hands in the air. I don't know what to do with all this. Like, this is a lot of crazy. That's and when I say a lot of crazy, I mean a lot of crazy. Like, every woman in my immediate family has been hospitalized for something related to anxiety, depression, suicidal ideation, drug overdose, addiction. So, of course, I would, you know, I could either fall into that category or I would, of course, end up a therapist working in those facilities. Well, he started seeing these institutions and places, and like, again, he's just like, what is happening? Like, they're going in, they're coming out worse than they went in. And you know, he has a great sense of humor. Like, he is really, really funny. So it's beautiful that I'm not in that industry anymore. And it did, it took me on my path, it took me on my journey. I got to see all the things that worked and didn't work in the behavioral health field, and ultimately came to a place of, you know, helping people in a really transformative way. But it's like the buffet, you pick and choose the parts that work. And so I was having this conversation with him yesterday where we're both just cracking up. Like, we're laughing really, really hard about the fact that, um, you know, these women ultimately in his life, none of them were in power. And that's not that funny, but his delivery of it was just really comical about, you know, kind of going back. It's like, you know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And this boils down to the relationship that I have with my own mother, where it's just, at some point, you're going to stop, right? The madness and the repetition, and just choose different. And it's in that choosing different that your life is completely changed. And that can actually happen in a very big way when you don't take um, these baby steps. This is the energy of trying that we talk about, where there's no such thing as try. It's either do or do not. And it feels like a very black and white approach. But when it comes to something as life affecting as your desires, because those are the GPS for your entire existence, is, you know, your desires shape your entire life. So if you're sacrificing those in little ways, they add up to big, really big sacrifices. And this is what Kavita was referring to as prostitute energy. So the way to alchemize that shadow of, you know, sacrifice and prostitute, so that you're in your pure desire, is to do something drastic, which is the opposite of all the ways that you've been hiding your truth and hiding your desires and hiding your power. So again, to connect this back to my dad, and he was witness to women who just um, did this in such a way that no man could ever serve them. Because when you're not being honest with yourself, you can't be honest with another person, much less a, you know, a man or a partner. And so that just, God knows, I had this picture when I was growing up, and nothing could have been truer than if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. Like, that was literally the words written on the artwork. I grew up in Mississippi. And it was like this country decor. And it's so true, because the male provider protector energy is trying so hard to provide all of the desires for the household. And yet, if the person, the woman, doesn't even know what the hell she wants, doesn't know herself, how can she possibly hand it over to the masculine, what we have been calling the warrior, for him to provide? It's just one big fucking shit show.
Yes. And that's such a beautiful point. So, for all of you watching this video, here's a good space where you can use the comments. Again, either on YouTube if you want to use that space, or you can keep it right in Facebook in the comments channel there. And really take a moment to answer this prompt. Where am I hiding my heart? Another way to say it, where am I protecting my heart? And write all the things that are coming up for you. There is no right and wrong in this answer, but it's you seeing what defense mechanisms you have taken on, maybe unwittingly taking on, to protect yourself. Where it is that you think that safety and security is the thing to do, and it's the honorable thing to do, but you might be protecting the wrong thing, right? So a woman can show up asking for something, but she can be demanding. And I know, Pam Mahade, you asked about the terminology that we use. What is the easiest way to use this right now is to not get into your head about the terminology. There is more where that came from. What you get to focus on here is what it really means in your life, and how to apply it, even from the tiniest nuggets. So when we talk about the child prince or child princess archetype, it's really talking about, think of a child natural behavior and how a child behaves. You will see many of the behavior patterns playing out. Now, while a physical child is a physical child, we go into our adult stages and we're still having the childlike behavior. So a few things for the childlike or prince behavior that you can recognize, prince, princess, is not wanting to take responsibility, um, for your what you are desiring to create or what you have already created. Um, it's also where it is that you might behave entitled, like you expect people to fulfill your every wish and desire. And yes, there are a lot of women who do that to men, and it's not a good energy at all. And it can make the man feel trapped, including if this person is your mom, right? There's a lot of manipulation energy that comes in from both sides. There's a power struggle. Um, it can also feel like, um, well, let's just do this if it's fun and games, if it's playful, if it's light, you know, because anything that requires commitment, no, let's not go there. So again, you men can see the prince energy in that. And it can come from protection, right? Because based on what you've experienced, you're like, well, I'm not going to commit to that, right? I'm not shaming the women here, but I'm just saying the energetics of it, right? It's the human dynamics, and we're meant to evolve all of this. It's also true for some women. If the men are in their prince energy, woman's like, no, that's not what I want, right? That's not what I desire here. So get to look at the human evolution here. Please don't get into judgment of yourself, because that's not the point of all of this. Um, and then for the prostitute energy, it's quite revealing how much men are suffering under this shadow as well, because they so much want to please the women or the men in their life, and doing it from the wrong reason. It can be quite tricky. There's sacrifice, people pleasing. These are prostitute energies. It's also wanting to feel loved, feeling like if I did these things, that I will receive that love, right? And that's not how it works energetically. It's really beautiful to have the experience of both, you know, a woman and a man coming from a place of power and truth. It's beautiful. It's simple. It's clean. Even one man to another man, it's very clean and beautiful energy. And unfortunately, we don't have that many examples in our reality for people role modeling this from our childhood. So it becomes our own evolution to take it upon ourselves to become that, you know. And this is why this challenge has been born in service to the men who um, don't know the other side exists for this, because they don't have the that in their reality in this moment. Um, so wanting to say that, and so Lainey, you can speak to anything else that's coming up for you before we step into the desires and decree part of the challenge.
I don't think I have much more to say except for, you mentioned something about this challenge has been born for those of you who haven't had that experience, and to, introduce you to that different world. And I guess the only thing I would say is like, I want to I don't want to use the word caution. That's not the right word, but it's like I want to just provide a disclaimer that it is that we're not viewing it from an all or nothing lens. So just like I was saying, you know, that I was in relationship with a prince becoming a king, we understand that somebody's on a spectrum in a sense. So it's almost like they could be primarily king with a sprinkle of prince, or they could be primary prince with a sprinkle of king. And, you know, it can, again, that's what the maturation process looks like. And so we're really not throwing anybody under the bus here, especially the women who may be on the princess queen spectrum and are, you know, making their way and they're doing their work. But of course, it's, we always have layers, right? So there's layers to peel in that process. So you may very well be in a relationship with a woman and you get to see a lot of those sovereign tendencies and qualities in her, and yet you would still recognize some of the princess behaviors. So I just wanted to, you know, just remind you all that it's not all or nothing. And yet when we're in masterclass mode, we tend to put things in those boxes simply because our human mind works that way, right? So it's one way of kind of seeing the world and categorizing things, knowing that it's not quite that linear. So
Right. Yeah, thank you for discerning that, Lainey. So, in other words, your reality, if you really want to nip this in the bud, it's unique to you. Yet this conversation allows you the exploration to see where those things are. How you address them and clear them is a whole other story. This challenge is to bring awareness and move you into the space of integrating certain key elements of the king when you're in that space. That being said, one of the other things I'd like to add a disclaimer to, it doesn't mean, well, if this isn't what it should be, and if this isn't right, using that word loosely, then I shouldn't have it. I should be like, no, this is it. I'm not available for this thing, you know. So let me unfriend all the people who are holding that energy. Let me get rid of this energy from my field from the outside. It doesn't work that way. You've actually got to do it from you, from the inside. And then, regardless of what's happening outside, it's no longer going to hook you. It's not going to pull you in. You're not going to have those things in your reality playing out that triggers you or affects you, or even you putting a blind eye to it. That's not what we're speaking to here. So please be aware of your choices, your avoidant patterns, and where you're missing a beautiful golden opportunity to go deeper into evolving your own self, right? And clearing the shadows. So that's one of the things that I wanted to say. And there was one other thing. So I know we use the language, Lenny had said, to choose differently. So a choice is not to avoid or to kick the people out of the room, right? It's not that. But choosing differently, meaning that you're not going to, now that you're aware, play the same old patterns out over and over again. Your curiosity is going to lead you to, well, what is the truth here? What does that mean? Right? And we can go deeper in that kind of direction. Now, going a little deeper into the call, the other thing that I'd like to say here is many of you coming into this challenge, because you came into this space from such a pure energy of curiosity, you hadn't yet given yourself the freedom and the permission to name any desire, even though we said, you know, state what you'd like to have as an outcome from this challenge. That was a bit of a stretch for you, because for some of you, you had no context and you didn't know what to do with that. So that in itself is a beautiful space for you to look at how much are you honoring your desires? How much are you even aware of your desires? And what does it really mean to name your desires? So you get to do that right here on this call, in this chat. do that. That is your first big step. For those of you who've already named your desires, that's a great clarity. You're already a step ahead of the game in seeing what that is. Now you get to see, well, what does that mean moving forward? So, Lainey, I don't know if you'd like to speak to some of the glitches that might come up in naming a desire, or what that means.
Yeah, well, I was just hearing already like potential voices of, well, but I really don't know. That's why I'm here. I thought maybe I could just, see how it goes. And we're not making that wrong by any means. And there's a more powerful place to lean into. And that particular defense, if you will, is quite sneaky. And we've been talking about the archetypes a little bit. So I'll just go ahead and name it for what it is, which is prostitute energy. And it's because the protection is so thick there that it's like, it's almost, your psyche would have you believe it's not even safe to let yourself have those desires. So there's a fun way around that. And it's, if I did know what I wanted, what might that be? So if you notice that your mind is playing games with you and telling you that you don't know and you're not sure and I don't even know where to start, this is a place for you to be in exploration mode and just say, like, okay, well, if I did know, it's not like you have to commit to it. It's like if I were to ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you say, I don't know. And then I'll say, well, if you could be 10 different things, what might those 10 things be? Right. So I'm just throwing out an example. So give yourself the space and the luxury and the gift of just naming what they could be. And this might be a place where you get to try on a few things, meaning that you don't have to commit to them for life just because you name them here. There is space to play with that. So that was one thing that I was hearing. I was just trying to think. You said any of the glitches that might come up. I think for men, at least, maybe I don't even want to stereotype it to men, but just certain patterns in the psyche. Again, they're protective defense mechanisms that would have you not even allow yourself to name it because you don't know the how. That is a whole other can of worms that you really don't need to know how, to just simply say, I would really love X, Y, and Z. Nobody said you had to do anything yet, right? So to just let yourself be in what we call lover lane, where it's naming your desires. And yeah, I feel like that's good for now. And of course, if anything
Yes.
else comes up, any other glitches that we didn't name, we've already invited you to be very transparent here and willing to name anything. You can't scare us. There's nothing that you could say or do in this space that would shock us. We're quite experienced. So please name the things.
Yes. I'm glad you said that, Lainey, because you get to first have that first layer of thoughts come out as your desires, like, this is the first set of things that crossed my mind. And it's not set in stone. You get to come back and be like, oh, but then after I said that, I got clearer on my desires. This is what is underneath that, or this is what I was truly wanting to say here, right? This is on you. This is you doing the work. We're not here to implant desires into you. That's not how this works. This is your desire. And this is your opportunity to go there if you've never given yourself the freedom to do that before. All right. So, yes, it might be uncomfortable. Yes, it might be, well, I don't know, but allow yourself the experience of it. All right. Um, I also want to take a moment here to point out we are building on these videos. So, these prompts are important. Do them. We love the willingness of the men who've already started working through the videos and the prompts and the questions and the power words. It's beautiful to watch because your energy in answering the things, you're clearing up your energetic field. And so as you go through these videos, you allow the truth to really show up, the desires to show up, on all the transformation to happen. It is, again, the truth is super subtle at times, but you can't sit on your, I'm going to say it this way, high horses and try to watch this and figure it all out from just looking at it from afar and think you've got it. It doesn't work that way. It really doesn't work that way. You've got to be hands-on, all in, open your heart and your mind and give yourself the experience. You can't look at others and compare and be like, well, I should be doing, stay in your lane, do your thing. This is for you. Take the maximum benefit of it. All right. We don't normally do free challenges. We want it to show up and serve you in this way. Bring your A game, bring all of it, even if you don't know what that means, show up. Like, that's why we say all of these things. Go ahead, Lainey.
Yeah, I was just going to say that that's such a beautiful point in terms of sitting up on the high horse. And of course, I had this image of a king, right? How they're like up in the castle or whatever. But of course, as we said, the prince can be very sneaky, and the king would very pleasing or happily play dress up as the king, right? To steal the king's throne. And so a king does not avoid the things. So that is the big sticky note of the day, so that you're aware that standing back and watching would be an avoidance tactic of, again, a prince, not a king. And this is the king's challenge. So show up, do the thing, and you will reap the rewards beyond measure. And really let yourself have an experience that where you get to blow your own mind, right? Like that's the opportunity that's here when you actually show up and, you know, take it seriously. So we're excited to hear from you and see you show up. And yeah, Kavita.
Yeah. So that is so important for what Lainey said. And I know we talked about the desires, and I wanted to touch a bit on the decree. Now, we will speak a little bit more of it as we do the second video, because you're not here to just receive information and be like, yeah, again, taking notes, got it all figured out, and not do the thing. It's in doing the thing you see what's truly there, and you get to bring it to the table. As the truth forms from the desire of what that pure desire is, then it's when it activates from the lover space of, you know, loving your desire and how brilliant and beautiful it is. It clicks you into one of two spaces. Either you go into that prince child space, so you're taking incremental steps, baby steps into the energetic field, and then you move into the king with that desire, or you move straight from the lover energy of that desire into the king's frequency, and he sees it, he knows it's the truth, and he speaks to it. And when the king speaks to that, that's what we call decreeing. Lainey's being tickled. Go ahead, Lainey.
I was just remembering the Notebook. You know how much I love the Notebook. And he says, what does Ryan Gosling say? When I want a thing, I just got to have a thing. And he's like, he's so clear. And that was so beautiful. Like, talk about king energy. He's just like, I know what I want. And he did not stop. And he stood for that. And I was picturing it very clearly when you were speaking.
Oh, thank you for saying that, Lainey. Yeah, and it's different from the entitled prince being like, yeah, I want this thing, I gotta have the thing. Somebody give me the thing, give it to me, right? It's very different than, this is what I see, this is what I desire, this is what I decree. And then it's the willingness to do whatever it takes that you have it. And it doesn't mean that you step on toes or hurt people in the process. That's not the point. It also doesn't mean that you're walking on eggshells in the process, because it's coming from the frequency of truth. And this is something you get to experience in your body. So let's see those desires. Let's guide you to the decreeing of what that means, because your desires gives us the material to show you how to decree. And I know we did say on the call, well, to show up on the call the last time for the men who are here, they get to have that hot seat experience on the call. And since you are catching the replay, or maybe you're still exploring what that desire is, you get to bring that here and we will speak to that degree on the next call. So please do your work. If we're going to be here again this time tomorrow, and we're also moving straight into the other aspects energetically and practically for the next steps of that. So we don't like it when you sit on your laurels and play games of pretend with yourself.
So I'm just catching, I'm like, are we really going to be here at the same time tomorrow? I don't know if that's 100% true. So I feel like we get to surprise and delight you with that. We'll come in, I'm in the middle of a move. So
Yes.
there's a window between the internet being delivered. But I also think it's quite possible. I'm deciding that my 4G data will work just fine. We don't actually need Wi-Fi for it. So yeah, we're looking forward to being here tomorrow. Is there anything else? I know I interrupted you, but.
I'm grinning over here because I'm like, that's how the queen decides, right? Regardless of appearances, you just demonstrated it. And so you had a full energetic demonstration of how simple that energy can be as well. So we look forward to serving you in what that means for yourself. And yeah, I think that's a wrap for today. We look forward for the prompts. Tag us for anything that you want, any support between today and tomorrow, so that you're on board for the next call.
Yes. And thank you to Ruth Levin for all of the notes and capturing all the gems. We now have a little treasure box of quotes.
Yes. Thank you, Ruth.
Yeah.
All right.